As the U.S. Supreme Court moves forward in its new term, ghost guns are at the top of the list of cases before them. The weapons have been a point of controversy as they can be bought online, assembled at home, and hard to trace when used in a crime. Joining me now to talk more about it is Dr. Mark Caleb Smith, professor of political science and the director of the Center for Political Studies at Cedarville University. Dr. Smith, thank you for being with us as always.
Thank you.
All right, first thing is this, what really is at the heart of all of this? And even when we talk about main arguments that have caused the justices to take up this issue.
So the constitutional issue is really whether or not the Biden administration can tweak the 1968 Gun Control Act and then through a rulemaking process essentially outlaw these ghost guns. So we have the issue of whether the executive has the power to do this, and then of course we would also have the issue potentially of whether or not the Second Amendment would allow for it. And so does Biden have the power? Will the Second Amendment allow for it? The justices, I think, are concerned because obviously ghost guns weren't an issue when the Second Amendment was written, and they always have to be mindful of how do you look at that language that was written in the 18th century and understand and interpret it in this particular context as technology advances.
What problems has this created for states, even law enforcement and families for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, ghost guns, as you said in your introduction there, can be bought by anyone, can be assembled at home. They do not have a serial number, and they do not have to go through a background check in order to do this. Whereas the Biden administration, by putting forward this rule, would require only those who have license to sell firearms to produce and sell these kind of ghost guns. And so they're trying to make it so that law enforcement can more easily track them. And ultimately, I think, make it simpler for law enforcement to prosecute people who use these in a crime.
What could we see from the court this time around? Because that federal regulation was reinstated last year. And then how might this change things moving forward, especially when it comes to sales?
I think based on their most recent rulings, they're a little bit more willing to allow the government to regulate within some reason. Last year, they basically said Congress might need to make some of those changes when it comes to things like bump stocks. I think the ghost gun is a little bit different altogether because the bump stock isn't necessarily the same kind of mechanism as an actual firearm would be. And just based on oral arguments, it seemed like the justices were at least sympathetic to this argument. It certainly could affect sales primarily by only allowing certain people to sell the weapon itself. Which could be really difficult, obviously, for those businesses that have sort of popped up in order to manufacture them cheaply.
All right, Dr. Mark Caleb Smith, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your communities, click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV for the latest information, balanced coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.